Hey everybody, it's your girl Nick. So welcome to another edition of the Bo Knows Business Podcast. I am Nicole Kober. My friends call me Nick, but a lot of people call me the CEO of 100 brilliant CEOs. This is such an amazing job that I have, that we have collected an organization of big-hearted, brilliant women who are at the top of their careers, at the top of their businesses, and they stop by this show to come and share with us, share some knowledge, wisdom, and you all will know why I am so happy in my job on a day-to-day basis. Today is no exception. I am going to introduce you to one of our brilliant new Bo members, Miss Patricia Bush.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, how are you, Patricia?
I'm good, and thank you for having me today.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, I am nothing if not transparent. And I have to just say that I am so honored to have you as a Bo member, to have you as a new sister of this organization. You are, I believe, a legend in our community. Definitely within the business community, but within the Black community, of trying to have organizations that really give back and scale our giving. That seems to be your God job too. Am I right?
You are, and I think you're doing that in such a special way with the Bow Collective. So I'm just so pleased to be a member of this organization and watch it grow and continue to give back to the community.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get started. I have affectionately called this your Michelle Obama becoming story. We have done this with over 20 of our members, Patricia, and every single time I sit in this chair, I am blown away. Number one, just by the level of consistency. It doesn't matter your age, where you were raised, but the women of the Bow have such the characteristics of excellence, of passion, of family. There are so many similarities, and so I cannot wait to hear your story. All right.
All right.
All right, so we're going to start with little Patricia. I always say, that's the our formative years from 0 to 10. Give me a day in the life. What was your life like as a young girl? Tell us where you were born, your family influences, and so forth.
So I was born in a small town, rural town in Houston, Pennsylvania, which is about half an hour outside of Pittsburgh. So Southwest Pennsylvania. And I grew up with a younger brother who was 2 years younger than I. So I always had somebody to play with, plus a neighborhood. My grandparents also were born there and grew up there. So it was the kind of town where everybody knew your name and you really couldn't get in trouble. I remember once I tried to skip school and Mr. Johnson saw me and he said, "Can I give you a ride to school?"
Because I know you're on a detour. That's where you were trying to go. Let me help you get back on your right path.
Exactly. So it was that kind of town. We didn't have a traffic light, if you can imagine.
Wow.
So I grew up in a safe, nurturing place. My brother and I just remember playing, and we could just use our imaginations and imagine that we could do anything.
Oh, I love that. Well, I too have a younger brother, and my memories are slightly different. I don't know if it was the fact that we were 3.5 years apart. Like, you think you're grown at a certain point, and, your younger brother, I'm like, oh, that's cramping my style a little bit. But I will tell you, it's so funny. He has the fondest memories. He was like, you were always defending me, and, the bullies tried to beat me up, and then you just came in and let him have. I was like, really? Okay. So I'm glad I didn't scar him too much with being a ruthless older sister. It has some benefit.
Right. And I grew up when I was a teenager. It was the time where women's liberation was just starting, and I became very active with the women's liberation movement and feeling about we shouldn't be second class citizens.
Yes.
And I know in my household, my father had definite ideas. Um, Girls did dishes and boys cut grass, and
Uh-huh.
there was no girls cooked and boys used the hammer and did the household repairs. And so that's how I grew up, and I was very rebellious of that notion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an interesting time for me. That was my focus growing up. And as
When you say that, so you talk about your father's influence, very strict in terms of gender roles, and this is very timely. We've just experienced Women's International Day and Women's History Month. So, what kind of influence was your mother on you during this time?
And my mother was, she was a voracious reader. And both my brother and I picked up that. And to this day, we trade books and recommendations.
Yeah.
We've continued that. But she was very giving. She was a person that gave back to the community. And so that's where I got that influence from. And so
Oh,
she was a Brownie leader. And oh, she just did so much in the community.
I love it. Thank you for that. So that is, I mean, it seems like such a idyllic childhood, and we know that everyone's experience is different, but we know that that foundation for you was very instrumental. So let's talk about your early career years. You had mentioned being active civically. Tell us what your education was like and what were your first career choices?
So both of my parents worked in factories. They didn't go to college, but somehow growing up, I always knew that was the expectation that I was going to go
Mhm,
to college.
mhm,
And I remember talking to my high school guidance counselor who recommended a local teachers college.
mhm.
And I just thought that's not the vision that I have for what I could do, and neither was it my mother's. So
Yeah.
she totally encouraged me to look beyond and apply to different colleges. And because of my budding feminism, I applied to Mount Holyoke College, a women's college in
Yes.
southwestern Massachusetts, and
Oh,
was accepted and went there. And then it was just a wonderful growing experience for me. It was truly eye opening. And I grew up not having any idea of other kind of careers other than a doctor or a lawyer. I knew I was
mhm.
a doctor
Many of
material.
us are like that. Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll be an attorney. And
Mhm.
in my senior year, Citibank had a trip from Mount Holyoke to go to New York to sit in and talk about careers in management. And
Mhm.
that was so eye opening to me. That was one of those pivot points in my
Yeah.
career. And
Yeah.
that's when I was interested in management. And then one of my best friends, college, she was one of my roommates. She had accepted a job at Polaroid in Boston. And she
Mm.
said to me, "Why don't you apply there? They'll fly you up to Boston. We'll both go to Boston. We'll just hang out." Because I had accepted a job somewhere else. But
Mhm.
I did that, went to see Polaroid, fell in love, and became a production supervisor at Polaroid in Boston. And
That's fascinating.
in the end, she didn't come.
But that got you there. Don't you love? I mean, I know that there. I'm going to doctor this this quote, but you know, life does not make sense when you're moving forward. It's only when you look back and you can see how in synchrony and harmony all those random dots seemed, right?
Exactly. And Polaroid was the absolute best for me at that time. It was a very nurturing environment. They were very focused on continuing education, but giving you a lot of different skills. And it had a very strong women's group and a Black group.
Oh,
So I found lots of mentors there that was very key for me. But as you know, at Polaroid, we made instant cameras, film, And we couldn't change.
We couldn't
Uh,
pivot, huh?
we couldn't pivot with the times. We couldn't move to electronic because today, who owns a camera, right?
We
And
were
there,
just, I was just in Cancun, and we did, one of the tours that you always do. And they were like, if you have an underwater camera, disposable camera, I was like, huh? Like, I mean, I literally thought twice. I had to process what he was saying in real time. I was like, oh, yes, we used to live and die by those disposables, right? Oh, my
right,
gracious. So,
right, which was one of those early lessons. Don't
mhm.
get too complacent. And
Yes.
so as a
No.
result, I found myself in 20 years at Polaroid with a marketing background, manufacturing, marketing all around, but it was going to be very difficult to sell my skills. And
Wow.
so my supervisor at the time, Ralph Norwood, he encouraged me to go back to get an MBA to
Mhm.
his alma mater, the Darden School of Business. And I went at 40. I was the oldest member of my class, but it
Mhm.
was the best thing I could have done. But I'll tell you, school started late August. I called him in October to beg for my job back. And he must have known because he just talked the whole time and would not allow me a word.
A
I
wording address.
Exactly. And so from there, I was recruited to go to a consulting firm because they appreciated the depth of my background. And I
Yes.
started doing strategy consulting under Dr. Kaplan and Dr. Norton, who created the Balanced Scorecard.
Wow. Explain to our listeners, give us the summary so we will all be educated on your brilliance.
Well, my brilliance was just being able to share their brilliance. And so
Mhm.
they came up with a framework called the Balance Scorecard that helped organizations to actually implement their strategy. Because too long, people, that was one of the boxes you checked off. You did a
Yeah.
strategy and then it went on your shelf somewhere.
Oh my gosh. I have 3. Okay.
There you go.
Oh
And
gosh.
so, using their framework, which consisted of a strategy map, which was a visual way to look at the strategy and think about the connections, and then
Mhm.
adding measurement to it. Because
Yes.
if we have measurement motivates. So
Yes.
putting this
Measurement
whole
motivates. Oh my gracious. This is great. This is
so
great.
putting this framework together, we companies could really actualize, implement what they said. But the best part, it gave you an early signal if you had, because strategy is just a bunch of assumptions, right? It's your best guess
Yes.
now about what's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
But by measuring going forward, you can actually get an indication if your thinking is on path or not, so that you can make early changes
Oh,
before it's too late.
I love it. I love it. I shared off camera with you earlier how I'm a member of another organization. I obviously have a passion for Black women. It is another Black women's group. I love my sisters. What can I tell you? But I have to tell our audience because I just think it's just such a beautiful story. So I was late to this podcast, guys, because I was finishing up on a strategic planning subcommittee of this very, very amazing organization. And I was telling Patricia, I was apologizing. I said, but I just finished on my subcommittee meeting, and I'm fascinated with strategic planning, even though I don't do it well. I'm just fascinated by organizations and how you get all of these amazing people moving in one direction. To which she said, not only was she a member of the same organization, she ran the strategic planning of the national body. So, how is it like? Number one, how great it is that I did not throw the organization or strategic planning under the bus because I am talking to the architect of our strategic plan. But I didn't know that. I think that is amazing, brilliant, fascinating that you got in so early with what I imagine are legends in that aspect of company operations and management.
It was a fascinating time to work with them and then my other colleagues. And I got the fortune to have some of the work that I had delivered published in their books, and I've been published in their books. So I'm very proud of that. But if I could just jump forward one bit
You
to
sure
where I
can.
am now with
Yes.
our company. And what I discovered was, and now I'm a little apologetic to all of my clients, where I would stand and consult and tell them how easy this was and how this was, they needed to do this and the measurement was critical. And now that I'm actually implementing it myself with
Yes.
our organization,
Yeah.
I have appreciated more the need to really be disciplined about it. And that's the
Mm.
most difficult part that I've found. And when
So
I would
let's back up and let's tell our audience about your jump to entrepreneurship, and not only to entrepreneurship, a very, very fabulous entrepreneur at that. Tell us how you made that first leap.
Absolutely. So I had I once again I seem to do things out of line, I think. And so after consulting for working at the Balanced Scorecard Collaborative, and it went through a couple of changes as a small boutique consulting firm, I met my husband, and so late in life, I got married. And we moved to Washington, D.C., and I wanted to do something else. And I went as I had the opportunity to work under President Obama and do strategic planning at HUD as a White House appointee. And so I was there for a few years. And after that, my husband and I were talking. What do we want to do with our careers, thinking about what's the future, where do we see ourselves? And we thought, why don't we start our own business, which once again sounded relatively easy at the time. And so his passion was facilities management, and that's taking over, being responsible for large government or commercial buildings or schools where you give us the opportunity to manage your building so that you can focus on your core competency, and you don't have to worry about the heating
Yes.
and the cooling, the snow removal, making sure that your huge assets are taken care of. And we do preventative maintenance to make sure that they have the full length of their value.
Right.
So we like to say from the roof to the fence line, we do everything in between.
Oh,
So we'll manage your building, and you can go do the work that you need to do to accomplish your mission.
that's perfect. So who was your first? Because I know when we're in this space, particularly in DC, with all the federal government agencies, state agencies, who was your first client?
Well, our first client was the DC government, and we were given Ballou High School. It had been recently renovated, and
Uh-huh.
I have to say once again, serendipity.
Yeah.
Today was the first day of our first client. Today we
Oh,
started at Ballou High School, and
wow. And how many years? I was going to say, how many years?
that was 7 years ago.
7 years.
7 years.
Congratulations.
So we've been in business 10 years.
Hmm.
So the first 3, we spent time laying the
Yes.
foundation, getting
Yes.
organized, and we had some smaller business, but this was a large,
Yes.
7-year contract.
Yes.
So
Oh,
I still remember receiving that award letter. We were over the moon,
oh my
and so
gracious.
our business started. But
I love that. I love that. And I can envision you getting that letter. That is one of the measures, I believe, of scaling, is that transition to, just trying to get it to a large enough contract that really has the financial ability to change the infrastructure of your whole operation, right?
you have absolutely hit it on the head. And as we've grown, that question has continued to come up, and try, how do we plan? Because
Yeah.
it's always the infrastructure
Yeah.
to support the work that we're doing that's so
Yeah.
critical,
Yeah.
and needing to balance that with business development and making sure that the operation that we have is successful
Yeah.
as we grow for the next opportunity. So absolutely
Oh, I
right.
love it. Now, this is we promise we're not going to use serendipitous not one more time in this interview. However, uh, my husband and I, we also, we're business partners, and we are really on the cusp of a different phase, a scaling of our business. And again, it is always the chicken and the egg, right? Like, do you get the client first, business development? Do you get a loan to get the infrastructure in place? So when you get the client, but I think it's absolutely a art form. It's not a science, because every industry is different. Every resource that you have is different, right? So my question to you with that is, what did you all do? What came first, the client or the infrastructure or the client?
So for us, it was first, in the early years, it was first the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And we just paid ourselves and
Yeah.
kept going. And then it became the business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now as we're growing, now I think it really has been struggling. And so what we've done a little bit was some outsourced
Yes.
support. And we found that has been working for us well. And so our thinking is using some outsourced structure until we, once again, like you were saying, make that big leap when it makes sense to pull that in-house.
Yes. No, this is great. I hope all of our budding business owners are taking copious notes, because these are the challenge. These are the struggles so we'll end with Bo, but I'll transition by saying, what makes Bo members, what is a hallmark of the business is not just that they have grossed over $1 million, because I think that leaves in people's minds a particular thing. The reason that I picked that number was the level of complexity that should be associated with $1 million plus infrastructure. You may not have it all, but you're aspiring to get there. The challenges, which comes first, these conversations, you can't really have those conversations out the gate, right? But when you are here, you need peers, you need consultants, you need, hey, what did you do when you got your first contract? Which was your key hire? These types of things. You need peers, right? And fundamentally, that was one of the reasons behind the Bo Collective. We talked offline about what it is, what the intention was, but what it is and what it can be. So I would like to turn it over to you to say, what is the Bo Collective? What has it been for you? It's been a relatively short period of time. And what do you aspire it to be? I'm going to give you 3 questions. What is it? What can it be? And what solutions, because you are a scaler, what are some challenges with businesses like us growing? And what solution, if you could give one thing for us to think about with our growth, what would it be?
So that's a little challenging, Nick, but okay, I'm gonna accept that challenge.
Up for it, girl. You are up for it.
So I'll tell you, our friend S. Catherine Allen,
yes,
went on and on about Nick, and the Bo Collective, and I have to say I was a little put off, but she convinced me, and I came home and I said I drank the Kool-Aid.
You drank the green Kool-Aid, child.
The green Kool-Aid. So for me, the meeting that I went to, it was just being among us and being able to be me.
Yeah.
Where so many times when I've gone to a conference, you have to put on your armor or put on the look that you want for that particular group. Yes. And at this, I could just be me, the women. I resonated with everybody. And contrary to other conferences I've attended, when you sat down at a table, you didn't have to feel work to make conversation. It was
Yes,
just
yes,
easy.
yes.
So I am so excited about being a member of the Bow Collective. And the other part is, as I mentioned, our first contract was with DC government, and currently all of our work is with DC. And our goal is to get into the federal space. We
Yes.
recently were awarded our 8A.
Yay. Oh, congratulations.
We're a hub zone, and obviously we're woman owned.
Yeah.
And so right now we want to now get into the federal space. And I have just found the GovCon committee is so supportive and helpful. And so to your point, I have a group of peers that I can reach out to and ask questions and get answers so that I don't have to make the same mistakes. And
Yes.
so that's what I'm excited about with
Oh,
the
that's
collective. And then
awesome.
if I think about the growth that I was excited, I mean, I'm very excited about the group, but as we scale, that same question about infrastructure,
Yeah.
when do you do it? I'm sure has to be on your mind and the leadership's mind.
Mhm.
And as I would think about what you want to do, one thing to, well, two things. One of my motivation quote is, "What could you be if you weren't afraid to fail?"
Yes. Yes.
So I would put that out there to think about. But
Yeah.
then I would think about putting, once the conversation we had earlier about definite goals and then how do you measure them?
Yes.
And
Yes.
thinking particularly around the culture,
Yes.
because particularly with companies, they focus on the financials. But we know it's not just about the financials. It's
Yeah.
about the internal processes, and it's definitely about the people and the human interactions. And that's what's critical to think about,
Yeah.
is really understanding what culture you want to have with the organization and how do you put structure in place that continues the culture. And I think that's critical as you go forward.
No, I appreciate that so much. You know, I said I'm gonna talk to you offline about this because it is a passion that I have. I want to scale and be able to maintain a culture of intimacy, and I know that there are organizations that have done it well, right? And so the great part is I do not have to think of it myself, that we all are owners of this amazing sisterhood, and we all want it to succeed. And so
Absolutely.
with that frame of mind, that will always be our sword, is that we have one another, we have grace and patience with each other, and we want the best for this organization. And with people like you, we cannot fail. We will not fail. We will scale. Oh, look at that. We will not fail. We will scale, and we'll still be the bow. All right. That's what I do. Stuff just flies out of my mouth. I was like, that was really good.
That's
And
great.
listen, I affirm myself in real time, obviously. Like, that was very good.
I love it.
Wonderful. Well, this has been such a pleasure. Let our audience know how they can stay in contact with you.
Sure. So the name of the company is Sustainable Facilities Management Services. Put that in and come to our website. Or should I show my
Yeah,
email? Yeah,
sure.
please contact me. It's Patricia Bush, and it's P Bush at SFMS Company, spelled out COMPANY.com.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. We did it again, guys. I mean, this is just, can we keep this up? Of course we can. I mean, these women are brilliant. They're so gracious, humble, and want to share. Today, Miss Bush was no exception. Patricia, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, my beautiful listeners, for coming back again and learning about these amazing women. Please bring a friend next time. Tune in. Come back next week. We will have another amazing story of another amazing Black woman who has scaled her business. Thank you all so much and have a great day.